Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the JPS Podcast. And I have a very special guest with me all the way from the US of A, Mr. Jordan Syatt. Did I pronounce that right, Jordan?
That was perfect, man. You did a great job. Thank you for having me, man.
Not a problem. And Jordan is an online coach, personal trainer, as well as a 5-time world record powerlifter. And he's a precision nutrition and Westside Barbell certified coach. And along with this, he's Gary Vaynerchuks, the Gary Vee's personal trainer. So the man knows what's up. And he's also been featured in a number of online sources and has a very, very straight up, no bullshit approach to training and nutrition, which I love. So very fortunate to have Jordan on the show today. So thank you, Jordan, for your time.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. So talk to me, Jordan. How did you fall into the fitness industry? Everybody has their story. What's yours?
Yeah, so basically I grew up as a wrestler. From the time I was 8, I was wrestling, and that, like, I loved it. I was obsessed with it. And so I ended up making varsity as a freshman, and I had to cut a lot of weight. So I cut from 112 pounds to 103 pounds every week for competition. And basically what happened was I really wanted to figure out how can I cut weight and stay strong and be athletic. And so I started to really dive into strength training, and I fell in love with kettlebells at a very young age. So I ended up getting my first personal training job at 14 at a kettlebell gym.
Wow.
It was insane. So it was ridiculous, but it was amazing. So that was my first personal training job, and I fell in love with it. And I coached people from 14 all the way until I graduated high school, and then I transitioned from wrestling to powerlifting. So actually I moved to Israel for a year between high school and college, just traveled and lifted and trained, came back, went to college, and was really, really deep into competitive powerlifting. I trained at Westside Barbell for 3 to 4 months. And then I went and trained at Cressy Sports Performance for about 3 months. And then all the while building up my online brand, competing in powerlifting, and really creating my website. And I ended up deadlifting 4 times my body weight, doing really, really well in powerlifting. And sort of like things just kept steamrolling from there until when I graduated college, I just had my own online business that was fortunately self-sufficient. So I ended up moving back to Israel, and I just was hanging out there until I ended up getting really lucky enough to get this job with Gary Vaynerchuk, and now I moved to New York and I coach him and do that, and that's the whole story.
That's awesome, man. That's a really, really cool story. So tell me more about how you obtained Gary Vee as a client. What's the story behind that?
So it's a crazy story, and it's wicked long, but the shorter version is I created my website when I was 19, and I was writing articles when I was 19 years old. And Gary's first coach, or the coach before me, Mike Vacanti, was following my website from before he ever became Gary's coach. So he had been following my work. There are comments from Mike on my website from 2011. So basically, when Mike was done with Gary, I ended up, Mike and I had been in contact before, and so Mike was like, hey, we're looking for applicants. And my advantage there was that Mike knew me and we had been in contact, and they needed someone that Mike knew because it's a personal job. You're with Gary every day, you're around his family. They can't just take a random person. So basically I said, I'll do it. I threw in my name for the application. And then Mike called me when I was living in Tel Aviv, and he was like, are you still interested? And I said, yeah, for sure, man. So he was like, cool. So you got to fly to New York and coach Gary for an hour. So I packed my bags from Tel Aviv, flew to New York for an hour, coached Gary, flew back to Tel Aviv.
Wow.
Didn't tell anybody. And then about 6 weeks later, I got a call from Mike at 1 a.m, and he was like, dude, you got the job. So within that week, I moved from Tel Aviv. I still had an apartment in Boston, so I got rid of my apartment in Boston, moved to New York, and a week later I was coaching Gary.
That's crazy, man. So talk to me a little bit about that. What were Gary's goals when he sought you out as a trainer? What did he want to achieve, and has he got closer to achieving those goals since working with you?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. when I first started working with Gary, the main thing that I had really been told both by him and Mike was more the aesthetic portion of it, like what he wanted to do aesthetically in terms of he wanted to build a bigger chest, he wanted to get leaner, just like get more jacked basically. But over time through working with him, what I ended up sort of pulling out of him was that he really wanted to get out of pain. He had some really serious hip pain, some really serious shoulder issues. He had some neck issues that were actually causing the shoulder issues. And so it's almost been a full year now. Like within a month, it'll be a full year. And he's ecstatic. He's like stoked. He's feeling really good. He has way more muscle. He looks fantastic, but we were literally just talking about it this morning. He's like, dude, fuck how I look, man. I feel incredible. And one thing about Gary that like, it's funny because you don't think about this stuff, but Gary explicitly asks when his assistants are booking his flight to make sure that he sits on the left side of the plane because he has better neck mobility and he can sort of like lean his head up against the left side of the plane. And we're on planes constantly. Like sometimes we'll be on 2 or 3 flights in a day and he can't do it to the right. And now he's like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like I can do that now and it doesn't feel weird. And like it's like just a lot of these things that you wouldn't even think about. He has a better quality of life and he's just so excited. So yeah, it's great, man.
That's awesome. So let's elaborate on that because I think shifting the focus from aesthetics to health is something that a lot of people don't appreciate until they start to realize, the negative, outcomes that are associated with being in pain and not being able to move properly. So how did you shift Gary's focus to, wanting more, mobility, flexibility, being able to train pain-free and, put the aesthetic goals on the back burner? And what changes then occurred in his training?
So what I think the really important thing to understand is like I never made him change his mind. It was more like my approach is very much just all encompassing. So like I never have had an ego with like one right way to train. I've never had an ego with like either kettlebells or powerlifting or bodybuilding or yoga. Like my training sessions, they include yoga. My training sessions include bodybuilding stuff. They include powerlifting stuff. They include kettlebell stuff. They include bodyweight stuff. They include everything. And I, especially more so at the beginning, because that's my way of sort of figuring out what that person enjoys, what they like doing. So when I was first starting with Gary, I had no idea what he liked. I didn't know if he liked doing really quick circuits. I didn't know if he preferred to do strength stuff. I didn't know, because for me, if they're not having fun with it, they're not going to be consistent. They're going to dread it. They're going to try and find excuses to skip it. So for me, a lot of people are so focused on assessments from how people move, but they, in my opinion, they don't focus on assessments from what are people actually enjoying? What do they love to do? So a lot of my assessment is just like, what do you like? And so basically, it was really interesting. What I really found out in the very beginning was Gary loved my warm-ups. He like really, and it's so funny because in a million years I never would have guessed that, but he loved the mobility exercises. He loved like being like, oh my God, like this really opened up my hips. Like, oh my God, like I haven't really felt like that rotation in my upper back before. Like I've never, literally he'll do this every day we walk in and he'll be like, dude, do you see how much range I have in my neck now? Like he like never, he loves that. And so what I realized was if we spent just a little bit more time on movement quality, whether it was through yoga movements, through from self-myofascial release, then we had a little bit less time from the actual strength training perspective, but the quality was better in the strength training because he had actually enjoyed up to that point. So I didn't necessarily change his goals. It was more just like I found what his goals actually were. And instead of me being like, we have to do bodybuilding because you need bigger muscles or we have to do this, it was more just like, let's see what you enjoy. And then like it sort of came out. And what happens is that'll change. I guarantee in a year, it'll be different. Something will be changed. He'll have a different goal. He'll prefer doing something else. And you just sort of have to roll with that punch. But like that's sort of how things progress.
It's a great point. Balancing the client's wants versus what they need is a very intricate balancing act as a coach, and I think it speaks volume of a client-centered approach when you can do that. So, it's interesting to see how you did that with Gary, someone who came for aesthetic related goals and then now is training more for function and, health, so to speak. And something I wanted to ask you about, Jordan, was Gary's obviously an extremely busy man, and we know that he loves wine. So how does how do you then manage and prioritize the things he needs to achieve his health and fitness related goals in amongst his busy schedule, socializing, and, very, I guess, unstructured, regimen?
So it's really funny. Like, Gary's previous coach, Mike, did a phenomenal job of really hammering the nutrition home to the point where when I came on, like, Gary understood what has protein. He understood, like, what's higher calorie. He understood that stuff. Now, it's what I find with Gary and what I find with a lot of people who are very, very busy and run businesses is they can literally go the entire day without eating, and it doesn't bother them because, like, they're so busy, they're so focused, like, they don't even think about it. So in the beginning, I would bring Gary, like, his lunch and make him eat lunch, but I realized, like, a lot of times he wouldn't eat it. A lot of the times, like, I'd put it in front of him and he'd have to change rooms or change venues and, like, just wouldn't come with him. So we do a lot of intermittent fasting with Gary, and because of that, he has a lot more leeway with his like one major meal. He has like one or two major meals a day, and because of that, it allows him to be a little bit have more leeway with that one meal because he has a lot of room.
Sure.
Because also, like, he's not sitting still. I don't know if you ever watched him talk, but he's like the guy who will fidget constantly.
He's the guy who will be activity. Yeah.
Exactly. He's like biting his nails. He's fidgeting, his knees or whatever. He's like standing up, walking around. He's running to the airport. Like, that guy burns so many calories in a day just from living. It's insane. Yeah. So basically, I keep track of him. Like, if he's going to a restaurant, I would tell him what I want him to order in terms of, like, you can have this food and whatever. I'll tell him, like, if you want a glass of wine, you can have one glass of wine. But he'll do whatever I say. So if I'm like, dude, you're not drinking tonight, he won't drink. And if he does, then he'll come in, like, to workout the next morning and be like, man, I'm sorry, like, I had an extra drink, and, like, he'll apologize about it because he, like, feels genuinely bad. Yeah. But, like, he'll usually do whatever I tell him to do, and he's at a point where I think just the way that it worked out with the order of Mike and then me, where Mike really hammered home nutrition. Like, he, like, was very, very strict with that. He really got Gary focused on that. And I'm much more, like, on the training side of things. I want, like, I'm okay with him eating a little bit too much if that means adding more muscle, because I'm just a huge believer in, especially as you get older, the more muscle you have, the more you're going to win. And I don't want to keep him in a deficit year round. I think it's one of the major issues with coaches. They keep people in deficit all year long. So, like, honestly, at this point, I would much rather Gary spend 2 years in a slight surplus, like, slowly building muscle, not having a six-pack, maintaining, like, 15 to 18% body fat, than, like, trying to keep him under 12% and, like, letting that cloud his brain and, like, focusing so much on nutrition, it's running his business. He's not trying to step on a stage. He's trying to feel good. And, like, most people feel really good around, like, that 15% range, and that fuels the workouts. It makes him feel good. And the biggest thing is, as long as he can go to work and crush it, then my job is done. Like, I just don't want him to be unhealthy.
A lot of really, really good points brought up then, Jordan. And I wanted to elaborate on some other strategies that you use for, really busy individuals in terms of their nutrition. So intermittent fasting being one. Can you explain how specifically you work that for Gary, and then some other strategies that you incorporate into his nutrition to allow him to achieve that, 15% body fat?
So, like, with Gary, the major thing, I went through a lot of, like, trying to learning phases about what's going to work best for him. And the really difficult part to understand about Gary, I don't think anyone really gets this until you actually see it. His schedule is packed from literally, like, from the moment we start working out until midnight, like, every second, including taking an Uber, including, like, meals, including showering, including meetings, including travel to meetings, everything. So, and it will change every day. So there's really not one set schedule where it's like, okay, Gary's always going to eat lunch at noon, or Gary will always eat lunch at this time, because that's going to change whether we're on a flight, whether we're in a hotel, whether he has a meeting, an unexpected meeting, travel, whatever. So the biggest thing for me was that I ended up learning, and this took me about 6 months to really like hammer it home and have a talk with him about it, was basically like, he was like, dude, I can literally go all day, not eat, and not worry about it. Like it is easier for me not to think about eating all day. It's like, it's just easier for me. So basically I was like, cool, done. Like, you're not going to eat during the day. And then we're just going to have one big meal at night. And then when things slow down, whether it's on the weekends or like over the summer or something, and like things aren't as crazy, then we can eat a little bit more frequently because he'll be in the house more, whatever. But when it's like work time, I was like, dude, you're gonna eat one meal a day and that's it, and we're gonna focus on this and this and this. And he crushes it, and he does exactly what I say. And what was the other question that you asked?
So any other nutritional strategies that you employ or focus points in his diet? Obviously, with that one meal, do you just let him eat whatever? Is it a calorie focus? Is there protein focus? What are the focus points for his diet?
The major thing, so I don't have him count calories. Like, I do the counting for him. Yep. So basically, like, for example, tonight I wanted him to have a light dinner, and we had a little back and forth about it because he had a pretty big workout today. But I wanted him to keep it lighter today because we're trying to like just lose a little bit of fat, and like, because got up a little bit higher than we wanted to. We got up to about like 172, and like we wanted him to maintain between like 164 to 166. So we're cutting him back to, and he was 167 today. So we'll lose a little bit. Basically, we're keeping him a little bit lighter for right now. And I was like, literally, I want you to have oysters. I want you to have this green salad. I want you, like, if you want to have a glass of wine, you can. If you want to have like some of the bread on the table, you can. But also really important is he has 2 dinners tonight. There are nights where he has 2 or 3 dinners. He has like a birthday dinner, and then he has a work dinner, and then he has another event. So I'm like, this is your main dinner. And so that dinner would probably net him around like anywhere between 800 to 1,000 calories. And so I was like, this gives you leeway for when you go to the birthday dinner night, because you'll also have like, you can have like X number of plates of sushi. And like that like gives him another whatever. So it's more just like either have a palm size full of this or have this amount of this. And I do the thinking for him. In my mind, it's about calories and protein. That's like number one. As long as like his calories and protein are good, he's fine.
Awesome. Yeah, some really good points there again. It's all about picking your moments when you're somebody who's extremely busy and not giving in to, eating whatever you feel like at every single occasion, because chances are you'll blow your calorie budget. And in terms of Gary's training, so you mentioned that every minute of his day is mapped out, and obviously changing, cities and states from, day to day, week to week would make having a structured training plan more difficult to implement. How does his training look in terms of, a program? Do you follow a program? Do you have certain exercises that you perform regularly? Or is it just a matter of making things work within, the constraints of what's available to you at the time?
So it's always, number one is making it work with whatever you have available. And that could mean, like, sometimes we'll be in a hotel and their gym doesn't exist. Sometimes, and so we have to literally, like, we've done push-up challenges in this hotel room before. We work out 7 days a week. So the cool part about that is I get a lot of room to play in terms of, if there are 3 days in a row where we're not going to have a gym, I'm not worried, because I know we're going to work out the next 4 days anyway. So what that means is, instead of necessarily being like, hey, like, well, this workout is botched, I can be like, we're only going to do self-myofascial release today. And like, I'm totally cool with that. Because it's different when you have someone who you only see once or twice a week, and that's it. Like, I literally get to see him every day. So, I have a general program, and depending on the phase, whether it's like, if we're trying to build muscle, I'm going to make sure we get like 4 really solid strength training workouts in that are usually an upper lower body split. If we're cutting, it's usually 3 really solid workouts that goes upper body, lower body, full body. And like, they don't have to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They can, as long as they just get those 3 workouts within the week, I'm good. And then the other 4 days or other 3 days or whatever can be basically whether we're doing yoga, whether we're doing self-myofascial release, whether we're doing like accessory work for his like body parts, whatever. You can fill it in as I see fit. I do have a general program, but we also very rarely work out in the same gym 2 days in a row. So it's like, it's also dependent on what equipment they have and and the time constraint that he has. So there's a whole bunch of factors, and it's really it basically boils down to being able to do anything on the fly at any time based on how he feels, based on the gym, based on the time constraint. There's a million things.
I think that's extremely important for people to understand, is that sometimes you just have to do what you can and, make, little progress in some periods of your training, when you are dealing with a really busy schedule, and just do the best with what you have available. And something I wanted to talk to you about, Jordan, was, based on your Instagram accounts, it seems like there's a lot of variation in your training. Is this purely a function of you traveling with Gary, or is it a wise practice to keep things interesting and fresh in the gym so that you can continue to have fun and, stay fit within, your current goals?
Yeah, so for me, when I was competitive powerlifting, my training was really boring, very boring, because that's what worked. That's what helped me get a 4 times bodyweight deadlift. I didn't have to do anything crazy. It was just this is what works. After I hit my goal with the 4 times, and after I stopped competing, it became more important for me to want to be in the gym. And I think a lot of people, they just assume personal trainers are they just always want to be in the gym and they always love working out. And it's after a while, it's it can be, if you coach people all day and all you talk about is fitness, sometimes the last thing you want to do is get your own workout in. So for me, having something that keeps me excited and fun, and for one of the things that I love doing is gymnastics type stuff. I like doing I like challenging myself. I like seeing if I can do random weird shit. Even if there's not necessarily a definitive this is going to help you build explosive power in the sagittal plane. I don't care. As long as it gets me in the gym and I'm having fun and I'm moving and getting better, then that's most important to me.
Definitely. And how do you balance then the enjoyment component of training with the principles of exercise, such as specificity, progressive overload, recovery, and all those things? How do you balance that?
It's so simple, man. It's for example, I really like doing gymnastic stuff, so I like doing handstands. So I know if I'm gonna do I know for a fact I'm a huge single leg training guy. I think single leg training is so important, so helpful. I think for a lot of people their hips get hurt from doing bilateral squats, their back gets hurt. It's just so much better, I think, to do more single leg stuff. So I will very regularly do I'm listen, I have to do lunges, or I have to do Bulgarian split squats, or I have to do single leg RDLs, and then in my rest periods I'll do handstands. Yeah. And, it's for no other reason, just because it's fucking fun. That's it. And it's in my rest periods, I'll do I don't know, muscle ups. Not because I'm training muscle ups, just because I think it's fun. So it's this is sort of go back and forth. And it essentially works as a superset. And it's not being this is the most scientific and you're working the agonistic musculature here. It's no, it's literally I'm gonna the main thing that I have to hit is the lunge. And then in the rest period, I can do whatever the fuck I want, whether that means if I feel great that day, I'll do muscle ups. If I just feel like shit and I don't even want to be there, I'll go on Instagram, whatever, you just gotta sort of listen to your body and your mind that day.
I think that's a fantastic point, because I see a lot of people getting too caught up on what is the optimal, training program, and they lose the enjoyment for their training. And obviously, long term, their adherence suffers because sustaining a boring and uneventful training program can be quite tedious. And this brings me to my next question for you, Jordan. Obviously, you've been working with Gary Vee, but you've had a lot of experience in training other clients. And what are the most common fitness mistakes that you see, people make? So
that's a really good question, and I think one of the major things that I see happening, especially with the people who are very involved in fitness, whether they're personal trainers or maybe they're just really involved fitness enthusiasts, is they initially get started with training because they love it. Working out is their safe space. Working out is what they love to do. Working out is where they can get away from the stress. And then all of a sudden there's a switch where if they don't hit a deadlift personal record that day, they're everything is death. Everything is terrible. They're so mad at themselves. They're pissed. They're the entire day is ruined. And then if their strength isn't going the way they want it to go, everything about them is just the gym sucks, life sucks, everything sucks. And I'm what the hell is going on? Like this, you got into this because you loved it, because like it was made you feel good. Like you logically know you're not going to increase your deadlift every time you go to the gym. Like you know that if you raise your deadlift 10 pounds a week every week, like that's like 10 times 52. Like that's going to be a shit ton of, like that's not going to happen. They just know that logically. So I think the biggest mistake that people really, really, really make is they take themselves way too seriously. Like this is working out. Like this is not like you're serving in like the Air Force and like you're risking your life. This is not like you're like making like a world difference. You're going to the gym to be healthier, relax, have fun. Like stop taking yourself so seriously and enjoy it. I think that's like people get way too caught, and I think a lot of it has to do with social media. Like people see like doing outrageous things, like incredible things on social media, and they start comparing themselves to other people. It's just this massive trap. It's like, just focus on yourself, focus on you, enjoy it. Like let all the other stuff sort of, let that happen. And if you want to watch it, great, but don't let it impact you.
I definitely agree. I guess I'm guilty of this. I'm sure you've been guilty of this in the past as well, because we can often only speak of our experience and then help others, not fall into the same trap as what we did. And moving into some of the finer mistakes, I guess, of nutrition and training, what do you see to be areas where fitness folk really screw up in their, diet and training?
Let's see. In their diet, I think, here's the thing. In terms of diet, like, I think there are two major forms of dieters. Number one are the dieters who thrive on counting calories and macros. And if you're a dieter who thrives on that, all you need to focus on are calories and protein. As long as you hit your calories and protein, you're good. You don't need to worry about like hitting like every carb or every fat, or like really like just hit your calories, hit your protein. That's number one. The other group of people are the people who don't do well with that, and they do much better with more behavior-based things. So like for them, I say like focusing on like 3 meals a day, 2 snacks. The meals have to be like fit on one plate, whatever. The people really, and like that's it. Those are literally the guidelines. Like that's how simple they are. People really mess up when they start being like, they start looking for the quick fix. They start looking for like whether it's the supplement that's going to like help them lose fat really quickly, or the workout program that's going to like change their life, or the exercise sequence, or the magic food, like there, or even something like where people are like, fruit's going to make you fat, right? People are looking for these like little tricks or like marvels or these unicorn hairs, whatever it is, that are going to like change the game. And when you are looking for the one thing, that's when you miss everything. When you're looking for the one thing that's going to make the difference, there isn't. There's not one thing that's going to make the difference. The reality is your calories and your protein are most important, and if you hit that, the rest is just going to fall into place. So that's nutrition. And then training is it's the same thing, man. Like my clients train either 3 or 4 times a week. That's it. Like except for Gary, but even him, strength training is 3 or 4 times a week. We have like a main movement, whether it's a squat or a deadlift or a bench press or a chin up. Then you have like 2 to 3 supersets after that, and you're done, and you're out of the gym, and that's it. And like people like really fall into a trap when they start looking for the fancy exercises, whether it's like standing on a Bosu ball on one leg, throwing a tennis ball at the wall, doing jump ropes, or like they're looking for like the crazy kettlebell complex, or they're looking for whatever it is. Like they're trying to like look for the thing that looks cooler, or the thing that it has this illusion of complexity, where like it looks like it's so fancy that it must work, where it's like the best coaches in the world focus on push-ups and pull-ups and bench press and chin up, and like that's it. Like they just focus on the basics because that's what works.
For sure. I definitely agree that a lot of people miss the forest for the trees. They focus on the minutiae of nutrition and training and forget the big picture stuff that's really what matters, the big rocks, the principles of diet and training. And based on this discussion, we can obviously, allude to, how important psychology is for, fitness success, and how much that plays a role in somebody's ability to follow their training plan and follow their diet and not jump from, program to program and so forth. So were there any issues with Gary from a psychological standpoint that you needed to address in terms of behavior change to, improve adherence to the plan?
In terms of adherence to the plan, I can tell Gary, like literally, it was the hardest part for me transitioning to the job was telling Gary what to do, because I had followed Gary for a long time, and like it was literally starstruck, like being like, okay, like welcome, and like I remember walking in the first day being like, oh my god, like do you want to do this? Like it was very challenging for me, because I was like, I don't want to step on his foot or say something wrong. And basically he was very clear. He was like, listen, you are the CEO of my body. You are the boss of my body. You tell me what to do and I do it. And he stuck with it, man. Like it's not a lie. Like whatever I tell him to do, he does it. And he made it even clear. He was like, listen, this is what Mike had me do, but Mike is gone. You're my coach now. Like now you tell me what to do. And he like, I've never had an adherence problem with him. He's always been like, he'll ask questions sometimes. He'll be like, why does this happen? Or like, why am I feeling this? Or like, why do you do this? It happened today when I said I want you light tonight for dinner. He was like, light, but like we had a really big workout today. And I was like, yeah, but like we're trying to get to this marker. And he was like, oh, respect, totally understand. And that was that. It was done. So adherence wise, he will do anything I say.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like Gary's very compliant and makes life easy for you. But what are some of the common adherence issues that you've had to deal with other clients?
The major issues that you see with other clients are, for example, especially like with nutrition, is sticking with your nutrition when it's either the weekend. The weekend's a big one. And it's something that a lot of people don't even realize. They're not like consciously or maliciously doing it. A lot of times they're like, hey, I'm like really sticking to the program. I don't know, I'm not seeing progress. And then I'll be like, okay, like walk me through the week, and they'll like tell me everything is perfect. And they'll be like, okay, cool. Like take pictures of everything you eat during the weekend and send it to me. And then I'm like, just literally take pictures of everything.
Yeah.
And inevitably, like after the first day, they're like, holy shit, like I didn't realize that I was having this and having this and having this. So the weekend is a huge one. And basically that just means making them consciously aware of it. And so it's sort of like taking pictures of everything you eat for the weekend, or literally like even just write down everything you put in your mouth, literally everything you put in your mouth. Because research consistently shows that people who are having trouble losing weight consistently underestimate how much they're actually eating. And it's not conscious, it's not deliberate, it's not malicious. You forget the couple handfuls of cashews that you took. You forget that you had like the orange juice that had 200 calories. You forget that you had whatever. It's like you forget that you put the olive oil and you didn't count the olive oil towards your food. Like so many things that end up adding to over 1,000, 2,000 calories to your day, and like you don't even realize it. So I think that's like a major thing. And then for some people, getting to the gym is a really big issue, whether it's because they hate going to the gym or just because they're so busy. That's like a major problem. And for them, my major thing is I have no problem starting someone off on a 1 day a week training program. No problem whatsoever. I would rather start someone off with a 1 day a week training program that they hit 100% of the time than start them off with a 3 day a week training program that they hit 50% of the time. Because I want them to tell me, I want them to get to the point where they crave it and say, I want more, rather than being like, man, I'm just burnt out, I need less. I would rather start with less and build to more than the opposite.
For sure, and that's a brilliant point. I think a lot of people set the bar too high and set themselves up for failure with their fitness goals, aiming to lose, X amount of kilos per week, do 10 training sessions within 7 days, whatever the case may be. And then when they don't do that, they have these feelings of guilt and, failure, and it's a very vicious cycle from there. And obviously, as coaches, I want to talk a little bit more about personal training in a broader sense now. What makes a good personal trainer? What do you think are the qualities a personal trainer needs to have to successfully influence change in their clients?
The number one, a personal trainer has to be a really good listener. That's number one. A lot of personal trainers just like to talk. And I think like a lot of personal trainers become personal trainers not because they like coaching, but because they like working out. And they're like, oh, this will be like an easy job. And then very quickly they're like, holy shit, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So in terms of, you have to be a good listener, because when you really listen to your clients, you will be able to structure your workout in a way that you know works best for that person. You'll know if that person likes doing this or that, which leads to the next point of being able to not getting like emotionally attached to any one training method. When you only believe kettlebells are the way, or when you only believe powerlifting is the way, or when you only believe Olympic lifting or metabolic conditioning, when you only believe there's one right way, you will limit yourself to only one population of client, and you will burn that population out very quickly, and you'll also limit yourself on results. I think one of the best things a personal trainer can do is be flexible in a variety of different methodologies, and understand that there's a million different tools in the toolbox, and like they all have a time and a place depending on the client and depending on like what they prefer and how you can sort of cycle it in there. So I think being able to listen, being like flexible, and not having an emotional attachment to your training methods, those are the two major things for sure.
I really like those points. They're brilliant. And something that's obviously really important, for a coach, is to build a relationship with the client and build rapport. So how did you do this with Gary? Obviously not knowing him prior to being flown out, and then all of a sudden like you're his coach. And how do you do this with your clients? Like, what are some key things that you do to build relationships and rapport with your clients?
The major thing is, for example, I know what a lot of online coaches do is they do everything via email, in terms of someone applies and then they send them a document, and then the person fills out the document, and then they have like check-ins once a week, and that's it. And like it's very cookie cutter, and like they're like, yeah, cool, you're going to check in on this app, you're going to give me your numbers, and it's just very surface level data. But if you've ever coached anyone in person, most of the relationship has literally nothing to do with the workout. Most of the relationship is like, what's going on at work? How are your kids? What's going on with your husband or your wife? It's like all that stuff is how the relationship is built. So when someone applies for my coaching program, the first thing we do is we hop on the phone for an hour. And the first thing I say is like, number one, where are you calling from? Where do you live? Number two, did you grow up there? And that question always sparks something more, whether they grew up there, whether they like moved or whatever. And then number three is basically to walk me through a day in your life. And I don't even want to know fitness. I just want to know, what do you do for work? What does your spouse do for work? How old are your kids? What sports do they play? Like, I want to know everything about you outside of fitness, so that I can get a better understanding of who you are, what your stress is like. Just get what you value. Do you like hiking? Do you like fishing? Do you like going to the library? Do you like pottery? I don't know. In that way, and then my clients, we talk every day via email. Like, they'll send me an email every single day. I have no limit to how much they can send me. I have I don't use applications. I think it's really impersonal. I would much rather just talk to them directly. And I constantly ask them questions like, what are you doing today at work? Like, how'd you they'll tell me shit like I have a new promotion, or like work was really stressful, or my fiance is pissing me off, or like whatever it is. Like, they're like, we'll have a discussion about it. And I think a lot of coaches, they try and look for ways around that. A lot of people say, well, dude, I'm getting so many emails, and like they're talking so much in the email, like how do I get around it? It's like, you fucking hit reply and you answer. Like, there's no quick fix to this. Like, if you want to build a relationship, you have to put in every relationship, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, mom and dad, brother, sister, friendship, client, coach. You have to put effort into the relationship, and that comes from listening to people talk.
I really like everything that you said there. I think you raised a number of excellent points. And one of the other questions I wanted to ask you was, in terms of, this experience with Gary over the past 11, 12 months, what are the major lessons that it has taught you about coaching someone? Because obviously, as a coach, when you work with people online and when you work with people, face-to-face for maybe 1 hour, 2 hours a week, it's obviously very different when you get the ability to coach somebody 7 days a week and be there all the time. So what are some key lessons you've learned in this experience? Because it's one of a kind.
It's one of a kind, man. It's like it's a life and an experience that most people like never see and can't really imagine. And And I also think it's worth mentioning that the guy I'm doing it with is literally not like anybody I've ever met in my entire life. In terms of like, someone else might have the amount of money to do it, and they might literally do the exact same thing, but they might complain more, or they might like be like, I don't want to do that, or they might whatever, like they might not be as actually as adherent as Gary is. So I literally think I'm working with the single person in the entire world who will do anything I say, no matter what, and like it's not even fair, because, and he knows it, like he's an anomaly, like literally, like he's the outlier that like everyone thinks that they are. Everyone thinks they're an outlier. Everyone thinks like, I'm unique, I'm a special butterfly, I'm like I like, everyone thinks that, and it's like nice to think that. It's like no, I'm different. 99% of people, no, you're not different. Like you are literally the same. And occasionally you come across this one person who just has this crazy mental attitude that is just totally different, and that's Gary. And so fuck man, like honestly, he makes my job easy because he does whatever I say. The most demanding part of my job is like I coach him insanely early in the morning. We fly and travel constantly. Like we went from New York to Ireland. We were in Ireland for 8 hours. From Ireland, we went to Brussels. We were in Brussels for like 16 hours. Brussels, we went back to New York, and then less than a day later, we flew to LA. It's like the most demanding part of the job is keeping up with him, and like the fact that like he can even like wake up at 5 a.m. for a workout after all that travel, and like giving 4 keynotes in a row, and like managing his entire business, which has over 700 employees, is like Jesus Christ, like. That's insane that you can do that. And he has a family, and he's insane. It's ridiculous.
That's phenomenal. And in terms of, as a coach, from a coach's perspective, how have you grown as a coach?
I think in terms of both as a coach as well as just in general as a person, the major thing that I've gotten way better at is patience. Patience coupled with empathy, I think, are the two like major ones that I can sort of like clump together. I think they often go hand in hand in terms of, I think, and this is not just with Gary, but over the years, is when I was very young, when I was in high school, like I started when I was 14, I used to get mad if people didn't do what I said. I used to get like really upset, like why aren't you just doing this? Like you came to me for my advice, like why aren't you doing this? And over the years, my mindset has sort of transformed into being like, it's okay. Like maybe like now's not the right time, or maybe we haven't found your reason why, and we need to dig a little bit deeper. And like, or like maybe this isn't the right program, and we can switch and try something else. And understanding that not everyone is going to be in the right time frame, in the right place, at the right time, in the right moment, in the right emotional place to actually elicit a certain change, but that doesn't mean they're a failure. It doesn't mean they're not trying. It doesn't mean there's nothing you can do. It just means that you have to try something else. And that I think has been tremendous for me, not only as a coach, but also just in all facets of life.
For sure. That's something that you can only really start to appreciate with experience, because I've definitely noticed that. I was very similar when I started at 18. I was gung-ho. Anyone who didn't follow my plans, well, non-compliant, gone.
Right.
Now with a family and with kids, I understand full well, the consequences life can have on your fitness goals.
For sure,
Jordan,
man.
Thank you very much for your time today on the JPS podcast. I'm sure the listeners will have had a ball getting an insight as to your training methods with Gary Vee. If you have any questions, guys, feel free to comment below, and I'm sure Jordan will get back to them. If you like this video, make sure you click the like button, subscribe to the channel for plenty more informative podcasts, and we'll speak to you all next time.